to Growing Up in Easton. Today is September 13th, 2023, and my name is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host, and I have the great pleasure of introducing two of my classmates from the Oliver Ames class of 1960. We're here this week to have our 63rd reunion. We don't believe it either, but anyway, we're here. So welcome, Peter Holster.
Thank you.
And Ron Madden. And Peter is from neighboring Mansfield, but Ron is way up there in Groton, New Hampshire, a little town of 700 people next to Rumney, which is a big place.
That's down the lower end.
Oh, okay. So he's become a real mountain man and enjoying the solitary life and peace and quiet and the beauty of nature. And he
enjoy every minute of it too. I didn't particularly like the trip down here because once you hit Massachusetts, there's a whole bunch of cars that come from all different angles.
Oh, that sounds very familiar. So, but that's a contrast, isn't it?
Yes.
From when we grew up. So tell us a little bit, Ron, we'll start with you. What are some of your earliest memories of growing up in Easton?
It was I didn't get to live in Easton that much because my family moved around quite a bit because both my parents had to work. And a lot of times in the schools and stuff, once I got into junior high, I had to take care of my two sisters, which I just loved. And I had an older brother too, but he's long gone, long before I am. So, but I remember my best year was my senior year. I really got to know people and the classmates, especially. Playing football too, and I liked being in the class play because I could kind of play I should have known right then and there when I said, I'm a sergeant and I got 9 kids of my own, so I should know. I said, little did I know that I was going to have them, but I enjoy each one of them. So,
How many children do you have?
How many children?
Yeah.
I only had two daughters.
Right.
And then I had 6 granddaughters and 1 grandson.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 great grandsons and 1 great granddaughter.
My goodness, you're populating the earth.
Yep.
Yep. So Peter, what are some of your earliest memories? Did you have to babysit David, your younger brother, like
No.
Ron?
No, never had to babysit him. My earliest memories revolve around the fact that I grew up in the area right here, the village of Northeastern. I grew up probably about 200 yards from where we're seated right now.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work in this building as I was growing up, which has changed dramatically, and delivering papers probably on North Main Street all the way up to the Stoughton line was something that I did around age 10, and that's always a memory.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the biggest memories involve the fact that I was living in an area with the Ames family and all of their contributions to the town, the buildings that they lived in, and the fact that my grandfather worked as a herdsman for the Ames family, and my grandmother was a maid in one of the homes. So I've always had this association of Northeastern Village, Ames's, and the people in that area.
And that people in that area, because you were on Linden Street, and that was part of Sweetville.
Right.
On the other side of Main Street. Now, I lived on the southern side of Main Street in Sweetville, the end of Seaver.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, 20 years ago, I was able to come back and live in that house. So
You were redoing it the last time I knew.
What's that?
Doing the whole inside of the house over.
Yes.
See,
I
remember things.
You
My
do-
mind is still there.
It sure is. You're good from the neck up. That's what what I would say. I'm still good from the neck up. Windows were replaced, and then all those heaters. I think there were 18 wall heaters, and they all had to be removed. And then a guy named Pete Peterson was this wonderful plasterer, and he came, and you'd never know that there were these gigantic gaping holes in my walls. But anyway, so Peter, you, like many others, had a paper route, and that's because the Brockton Enterprise, everybody got it.
Yep.
It was a popular newspaper, and TV didn't come until 1949 or so. Some people didn't get television until the early 50s. So the people got their news through the Brockton Enterprise, and so you had gave a valuable service, didn't you?
Well, it was a valuable service, I suppose, looking at it that way. I also can remember as a child when we coming back from visiting my grandparents on Friday nights and the Enterprise, that the Enterprise itself was a glass front, and they used to post the world headlines on the Brockton Enterprise windows. And so when we wouldn't by 9, 10 o'clock at night, you could read what was going on in the world from what was handwritten and put up on there. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, it's something that has stuck in my mind, and because I delivered papers, and I got to know Stan Bowman quite well. In
Oh.
fact, went over to his house a couple of times, and was involved with some photography because Stan Bowman was the
Right.
big photographer for
Yep.
the Enterprise, and all of his photos are in Stonehill, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and he took photos when I became worthy advisor in the Rainbow Girls. He took all my photos, all the photos. He was everywhere. He had his own business
Yep.
too, so and there's a wonderful. His collection is incredible in the diversity of photos. So, Ron, you didn't deliver papers, but you must have been doing something because
Yeah, what?
you didn't deliver newspapers when you were.
Yes, I did.
You did.
Yes.
Okay, so
Mostly on 138 from, I don't know if people remember this, the Unionville School.
Yep.
Right from there down to where Hilliard's is. And then both sides, both Elm Streets I did, down as far as the Frothingham, which is now the town.
So, but there wasn't that much traffic. I mean, if you were to
I know.
do that today, you could get killed, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Ron and I have a kind of unique situation. I just found out today. We both worked at Monty Ice, cutting
Yeah,
ice,
Fred J. Monty's.
cutting ice off the pond. Natural. Yeah, both of us worked there.
Really?
It was
I
great
think we were
money.
getting something like $1.50 an hour, and that was ridiculous kind of money.
Great money. I did it during February vacations.
Really? Yeah, and you know, the Historical Society in town does a show on Monty's Ice at least every other year or so. Wonderful photos, and but you got jobs there. Senior year in high school?
I did it senior year. You did it more than that, a couple years.
What?
Worked at the ice company.
Yep.
Yeah. And what was entailed with that? I mean, was it a dangerous job cutting the ice?
Some places where,
Yeah.
where he wanted, I had no idea. I didn't want to work anywhere near the ice house. I worked outside on the ice.
And I worked in the ice house, and the danger there was the fact that you were working with pike poles that ranged anywhere from 8 feet to 15 feet. And the ice would come sliding off the run, and you'd have to stop it and direct it, and then it would have to be spaced.
Oh, wow.
And they weighed
And-
about 200, 200 and a quarter.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Like nowadays, all like my great grandkids and my grandkids, they have no idea. Well, how did they keep the ice? They just put them in this big house and put some sawdust down, and that's it. And they would pull it out in the middle of July and take it down the Cape and wherever they wanted to go. What about the refrigeration? I said that was it.
Right.
That was the refrigeration. So
Yeah.
And I can
couldn't believe
remember
that, yeah.
the ice being delivered to the house
Yes.
because we had ice boxes. And
Yep.
I used to love it in the summer because I knew the ice man, and he'd give me a chip of ice to kind of suck on during the middle of summer.
Yeah. I remember the Iceman too, and he was a little guy, but he was so humped over because of the ice. So the ice pick, picked up and
Carried
then he
it over his
carried it
shoulder.
over his shoulder like this, and he'd come in the house and he'd put it in my grandmother's ice box. Yeah. So yeah, we all have those fond memories, and I remember the rag man too. He had a very old, sad, unhealthy horse who was pulling the wagon. And my grandmother, she felt so sorry. And my grandmother she had hardly 2 nickels to rub together herself. But that ragman had to come in and you sit down and you're going to have supper with me right now. You're going to have supper, have a good meal. And that was part of the support, I think, network that we grew up. We kind of took it for granted, didn't we?
Yes. Do you remember the name Tom Williams?
Yes, the guy he gave it was he pulled the tractor with the wagon.
Yeah, he did. He did hay rides.
Hay rides.
He did hay rides, and in the winter, he would talk about Ron plowing in the winter as he does up in New Hampshire. He used to have a horse-drawn sidewalk plow
Really?
that would come along all through the northeastern village and plow the sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 2 draft horses, and he had kept one in the trailer. When the first one got tired, he'd switch them off and continue it. Yeah.
And those draft horses, they were huge
Oh, they were huge, big ones, yes.
and strong. Yeah. Do you recall those days?
Yeah, I've done that. I've seen them guys do it. I've never plowed with a horse.
No.
The one I plowed with is big orange truck. And it had many horses under the motor.
Now, Ron, your humor just comes through. I remember you were the funny man in our class, and
I'm good for
and
a
you're
laugh here
still.
and there.
And I think, don't you think that humor is good medicine, and part of why you're still hanging in there, and you're in good health and have lots of vigor?
Right now, I have a granddaughter. She just turned 40. She lives with me, but she moved in with me after my wife died a couple of years ago because I had Tennessee a couple of times. I fell once. I broke my hip, and then another time I shattered my left leg, so I had a hard time getting around.
Well, you certainly don't have a hard time now.
Oh yeah,
You're really doing well.
because I have a great granddaughter that's living with me. She's 21. She's going to be an RN in 8 more months. She goes to school down in Plymouth.
So have you shared, both of you, have you shared your stories of growing up in Easton and the kind of life you enjoyed with your children, grandchildren, and in your case, great-grandchildren? Have you shared that?
Yep.
And are they amazed?
They, like the ice house there, they still can't get over it. You didn't have refrigerators? Yeah, we have refrigerators. Don't worry about it. But we had to put ice in them and stuff like that. So.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell them what it was like growing up.
So the life was simpler, but people seemed to be very happy.
Yeah.
It was much simpler. There was a greater interaction between neighbors. I remember that.
Well, a lot of
compared to
times
now.
too. We were a lot younger. We didn't know what was coming.
Right. But I remember going where I lived there in the backyard. Almost everyone had a garden. Tomatoes, string beans, whatever. And as a kid, I remember if you're out playing and you got hungry, no one minded if you took a tomato. No one minded if you picked up an apple or a pear from the tree.
Mm.
And it was, you were going through their yard and they'd wave and say hello.
Mm.
And it's, you don't see that, I don't think, today.
Well, a lot of people don't have gardens anymore.
Right.
And gas was 25 cents a gallon.
That's for sure.
Because
Yeah.
I worked at a gas station, I knew.
Yeah. And I remember when it went all the way up to 32 cents a gallon. I was my first year of teaching school.
And I worked at McMenemy's Hamburger House.
Did you?
Yep. When he had just put in a small grill, he had more or less store there. Because I lived like 3 houses down. And naturally, I wound up working in the store. Next thing I know, I'm working someplace else. And it grew into things like I used to have to take him, and I didn't mind this. He had a big 56 packet
Uh-oh.
Eclipse, that had all the bananas in it and everything. And I'd have to drive him down to his, he had a cottage down in the Cape. Drive him down there. We used to stop at the 400 on the way down, and he would buy my lunch. Of course, I had fried clams then too. So, and then 2 days later, I'd go down and pick him back up, bring him up. But I says, those 2 days, I had this big packet to drive around, and
It was nice.
nice.
Yeah. Right now, the McMenemy Hamburger House is now the Beanery, and I was just there yesterday.
What is a beanery?
It's a coffee house, and they have.
Why don't they just say coffee house?
Oh, because Beanery is so much more interesting. Anyway, but Ron, you can get breakfast food. So, I think you can get eggs and bacon and stuff like that. But muffins and Danish and whatever you want, and they have it outfitted in the 1950s style, and on the walls they have all kinds of kitchen equipment and utensils from the 1950s. And if you go in there, you'd certainly recognize most of the interior. It's so much fun. Yeah.
The plaid tablecloths, are they there?
The what?
The plaid tablecloths?
Oh, the plaid. You mean the red and white plaid? No, they
Okay.
aren't.
The what?
Red and white plaid tablecloths, always
Yep.
in some of the, like over at the...
In the Hamburger House.
Yeah, in the hamburger houses. And over the ice cream place in Brockton. What was the name of it?
Oh, yes. You mean Producer's Dairy?
Producer's Dairy. Yeah.
Oh, didn't you go there if you were good on a Friday night when Dad got home from work?
Yep.
We'd get in the car and we'd go to Producer's Dairy and get a nice big ice cream cone. Oh, those were the days.
That was over by the Brockton Fair.
By the Brockton Fair.
Oh, you
Which-
remember that?
Oh, yeah, Brockton Fair. I used to go with my brother.
I worked there too.
Yeah, my brother had sheep.
Anything to make a buck,
What did you do there?
Anything. A couple of times I had to do these things. Oh, come on in here. Come on in here.
Oh, you mean you were Barker?
Yeah.
And what about you? You go with David, your brother?
Yeah, my brother was in the 4-H here in town,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he raised sheep in our backyard. So he used to show sheep at the fair, and we'd drive a carload of kids in, and we'd take off and spend whatever we wanted to do at the fair. But he would take his sheep over to the tent and get them ready to be shown.
You talk about sheep in the backyard. I mean, and gardens in the backyard.
Yep.
My family had 100 chickens and 3 pigs in the backyard. And how many people did that? I think it was quite prevalent, don't you?
Yeah, no, it was in our neighborhood. There wasn't a house on the street that didn't have a backyard garden.
Mm-hmm. And Ron, how about you? You were on Washington Street, right?
Washington Street, right across from what's now the Union Villa,
Oh,
the restaurant there. Well, the house no longer exists because at one time it burnt down. But it was when we first moved in, it was an old farmhouse. It was at 8 rooms.
wow.
And the thing that I remembered is when we were doing over the kitchen that had one of those big French ovens in it, but part of it, you could push this brick in and the door would open and it would stairs that led down in the cellar.
Oh my goodness.
And what was that for? Because at the time the house was built, there was Indians and everything else around. So, but I said I can remember as a kid playing all through the Frothingham Estate with all the little trails going all over the place. Now there's all kinds of houses there.
Right, right. So you were close to the cemetery on the corner of
Yeah.
Elm Street and Washington. Yeah. So, and then there was a church there. Do you remember
The what?
The church? The Congregational Church was on the other corner from the cemetery, on that same street, Elm Street and Washington.
Yeah.
Big white wooden church.
That was early. I don't remember that.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Yeah, that was early. Could have been before. Maybe I just saw it in the historical accountings.
I know there was, I don't remember the church being there.
Mm. So anyway, yeah, but everybody remembers Buddy's Villa, right? Union Villa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Best pizza in town.
Yes. And now the town spa in Stoughton is a good competitor.
Okay.
So, but
What- Overall, I mean, I have good memories. I still have my class ring, and I gave you some stuff that I had kept all my life too.
it's amazing what you had. I know.
I know it, and then every once in a while I'd look at it and oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so Ron is tomorrow. We have our reunion luncheon, and he brought a stack of memorabilia, and even what I was impressed with was the senior class play that you were in with Ivan Rosenberg, I believe, and Kathy Burke.
The
And
what?
the senior class play.
Yeah.
You have the program for that.
Yep.
Weren't you in that play?
I was Sergeant O'Hara, and I was supposed to be the wisdom one because everybody else was all like the kids in the neighborhood, right? And it was like a murder mystery thing. And my favorite thing is, oh, I got 9 kids of my own, and I know all about it. Well, I know all about it now because there's more than 9 of them, including the great grandkids.
Yeah.
I was in the play also, and I remember my father's soft hat. I think I still have a picture of that.
Really?
That was part of my costume and a suit because I was some sort of a point or something. I don't know what it was. I can't remember what I said or what I did, but
Mm.
I remember my father's soft hat because I ruined it.
You ruined it. So, what impact do you think growing up in Easton had on your future life? You know, as you're looking back, was there anything that made you the kind of person you became, Ron?
Yeah. Nothing there.
Well, of course there is. I mean, you were very independent, and I can see from your personality, you're still very independent.
Yes, I am.
So, you know, that was something that we got as children. We were given the freedom to roam and freedom to do what we want, whether it was a paper route, whether it was working at Monty's Ice. I mean, whatever we wanted to do. And we didn't have parents who were hovering over us. We had this freedom, and it created independence and self-sufficiency, didn't it?
Well, I learned long ago because I used to have to, especially like in junior high and part of high school too. I had 2 sisters I had to take care of.
Mm.
Whether I liked it or not, I had to take care of it. And along with that is, father would come home about 5 o'clock and he wanted his supper. Well, guess who was making the supper? It was me. But my mother was very good because she would make homemade bread and everything else. She said, all you got to do is take this, put that in the oven at a certain time. Okay. But I used to have to wash the floors and stuff like that. But
So you learned to be to take care of yourself. So when you
Yes.
got older, so so I'm sure your wife really appreciated that. The fact that you were a team.
it came in handy many times, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. And Peter, you're going to say something about that.
Yeah, I definitely think the town had an effect on me. And in the sense that in high school, I was a member of the future teachers. I knew I was going to become a teacher.
Mhm.
I did become a teacher. And I spent 39 years in the town of Norton. But aside from that,
Teaching. In
teaching in Norton, yes, biology and environmental science.
Mhm.
But aside from that, the fact that I was delivering papers, the fact that I worked here at Steadfast.
Mhm.
At Steadfast, I worked in shipping and receiving, and
Just one comment to the audience. We are now in the building. This is a professional building at 50 Oliver Street, but originally it was the Steadfast Rubber Company, and you worked for
yeah,
the Steadfast
I
Rubber.
worked here, and we used to send our products to Holland. We send our products to Canada, and because of that, I knew there were other places. I knew that it wasn't just Easton. It opened up for me the fact that there were other countries, and I had a relationship with that through this,
Mhm.
which I think worked for me.
Mhm.
Being a paper boy, having to pay a bill
Mhm.
for the papers that I delivered, and then getting paid in turn for that.
And I don't know about your family, Ron, but I know Peter's family, his grandparents were immigrants from Sweden. And my grandparents and great grandparents were also immigrants from Sweden. And so, and then our parents went through the Depression. So that made them very frugal, very, wise with money. My grandmother would say, the dollar is your best friend. And so I think that had an impact on us too, to spend things wisely and to share, what we could with other people who needed it more than we did. And so I think
That was a big thing as far as in the winter or even in the spring. Shoveling snow.
mhm,
Okay, it's something we did as a kid. And my parents would always say, if they offer you money, fine, but don't ask for money
right.
because they need it for more than you do.
Hmm.
And you're doing them a favor so they can know. If they offer you the money, fine.
Right. And that was the case in my neighborhood too. You didn't say, well, I'll shovel your walk for X dollars. That never was said. No.
No,
And people help neighbors.
Yep.
That's a big theme. Don't you think, Ron? You helped your neighbors, and
I was elected because my brother was 2 years older than me. He was useless. He was on his own little ride someplace. But I was always elected. My father would say, "Oh, by the way, the next 3 weeks you're painting your grandfather's house. I am. What about my paper route? Oh no, after your paper route. Oh, okay.
and how old were you?
Huh?
How old were you then when you were?
About 13, 14.
Yeah,
I didn't have my own car, so
right.
I said, when I turned 16, I had my own car. Of course, I
Mhm.
had a couple of oddballs, too.
Right.
There's a
But
little note in there that Ron Madden leaves trying to start his car. It was because I didn't have a key.
you didn't have a key.
No, there was always a screwdriver down underneath the seat. A couple of girls one time borrowed my car. Said, Ron, can you, getting ready to play football. So, Ron, can we use your car? Sure. I said, you know where the key is? Oh, yeah. But almost, it doesn't have that much gas in it. I don't think they even made it down the street and it ran out of gas. You know where I'll expect it? Back here in the parking lot. This is at the old high school, which might be the old high school.
Yeah.
I went up through there and I'm sure, oh, I get lost just riding around in the high schools, which is which.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It is amazing. And I used to work at the polls and checking people off, and they would say, give me their street address. And I would say, really? Never heard of that one. Where's that? And that was the case more than less. Yeah. So there's been a lot of new development. But one thing we can be proud of is that 38% of our land mass is in conservation. And how many towns can report that? 38%. Yeah.
you go to the town of Westport and you'll find a similar situation.
Yes. Uh-huh.
They have a tremendous, and I know that because I used to have a house down there. We just sold it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all they're working for the environment is the same way it is here.
Right.
And this environmental situation in Easton is very good.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you guys had happy childhoods, hardworking childhoods, but also made good. You grew up with you learned a lot of good lessons that kept you going in the paths that you wanted to, with independence and being self-sufficient and trying to make a difference. Wouldn't you say that you got all that from Easton growing up?
Sure.
One thing that I find kind of interesting, I don't know how many people have actually seen him build a log house out of real logs. And right now, there's a company, brothers, I know them all, but they're building, my neighbor is actually having a log house built
Mm-hmm.
where they actually cut down the trees and then they mill them
Mm-hmm.
to each one of them. Then they make 2x4s, 2x6s for the insides, because the insides are regular houses. But just to watch these guys work
It's amazing.
with the logs and then see inside,
Mm. And so, where you come from or where you live, there are lots of trees,
Yeah.
and so it's just a beautiful area. So you just every morning, look out.
Yeah, and
And-
when they do a lot of cleaning, they clean it all up too,
Right.
because
Yeah.
they actually chip it.
Uh-huh.
Everything, all the scrap wood and everything, they just put it in a big
So it-
chipper and chip it.
So it must be really fascinating for you to see that. Yeah. Well, you taught environmental science, Peter, and you're looking at an environmental benefit, log house, using natural things and living in a natural way. So I'm very proud of our class that we have been kind to our environment and been on the right side of that issue. I compost. I have a I have a I have a big thing that I turn, and
Yeah.
compost and make my own soil and stuff. So I don't have any methane into the environment. I'm trying to do my part and recycling everything, and yeah. So this is something we can all do something, and it sounds like both of you have been doing that for a long time. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories.
Yeah.
I love the Monty Ice story. That is truly a historic story about Easton. That ice story.
Yep.
Monty's Ice Farm, was it? What did they call it?
Ice pond, that's all it was.
Oh,
was
yes,
an
Monty's
ice pond.
Ice Pond, right.
One
And-
thing I'm looking for is my aunt died last year, but she was 106. She
One-
lived in her own house and took care of her own laundry and everything else. And I'm going, yeah, I'm 81 now. I got a couple more years yet to go. And do I want that to go that long? I don't know. As long as I'm healthy, I'm fine.
Exactly. And you will be, because you live a good, rigorous life, and you're full of vigor and good humor. And those are the things that create longevity. Peter, you too.
Gee,
So
thanks.
you're welcome. So keep it up, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
And,
try.
and thank you so much for coming to our show, Growing Up in Easton. Until next time, be well.